symbol of ordinance. Characteristic values that today in Mexico are under suspended in the attack. It's not about social methods that the worst specialized the sense of great capital engines of cyber seeking to weaken the West and to corrode the moral, political, and economic conditions of our civilization. Justice and liberty when manipulated to that trade are turned into weapons against themselves. That is part of we stand today. For Mexicans, terrorism is not an abstract concept. It is a daily reality. I speak not from theory, but from personal tragedy. Several years ago, spoken of my mother, for 3 years himself, was murdered in Golden Land on a mini island of Chihuahua, a city of more than 1 million inhabitants. It was killed by a young woman under the influence of drugs, simply was killed. The consequences were the family. My mother, about to the straight to sent the power to the first church in the book of suffered and ensured that took her life into use. This is what narco terrorism does. It does not only kill individuals, and their families, communities, and neighborhoods. But this is not the first time my family or my country has confronted defense of the Republic. More than a century ago, my family developed ours to stand the Mexican Republic against the French Empire and its Austro-British allies. Mexico, instead, took refuge in Chihuahua in this struggle. The frontier region, also known as the Pacific, today's great in the Pacific. Even earlier, my great uncle Paquita Razas personally led the defense of Chihuahua against the violent attacks and uprising. He is as a warrior rise in the American side of the world. The final chapter of the 19th century epic from victorious John Lieutenant Freeman and was Geronimo. That chapter history teaches is a simple truth. All of them must prevail over chaos with the history. Those central political values develop free markets and peace are the ones who both stand today, not the drivers, the powers, organization, and moral clarity. They are values that give rise to Mexico Republican, a movement born from middle classes of North Mexico, historically aligned with the charities of the. For this commission, we have a price, the price purchase of the parties of the wheels, and the leaders, have been matter. Why decisions for Russian people have been written to prevent us from achieving the power restriction. Why? Because our way system relies on something based with desert Mexicans are not engaged in facing enemies that appear invincible. Before concluding, I want a personal word of gratitude. I thank Mexico Republicano to restore some conflict, which are actors, bombardas, the global, and the the commitment of the heart out on the rivers is a testament to convictions, not to a kind of silence. I thank my beloved wife, a former senator, and my darkest companion in this struggle. Her integrity, strength, and faith have sustained me in the hardest moments. I welcome my children today, Emilio and Paola, needed conservatives and Republicans who understand that liberty is not only automatic, but defended by each generation. Finally, by someone who has to be committed with the past, who can remain in Mexico, each obligations of service. The success itself reminded us of the room in Charlotte across Norway. God bless America, God bless Mexico, God bless our life, God bless Donald Trump, this president.
I want to mention something that's really important. I know there's always these conferences and these events. Our goal at CPAC, and as we're going into CPAC USA, which you are all invited to come, we have a huge international presence there in March 25th to the 28th. I know Juan Ivan will be there with us as well. The theme is actions, not words. So while we are going to have these conversations on stage, our goal is from here to know what is our call to action. ¿Cuáles son nuestras acciones? No vamos a no solamente son palabras, pero de verdad, ¿qué hay que hacer?
Claro.
En lo que es para de verdad hacer una diferencia en nuestras comunidades y nuestras naciones. So I think one and one, we're committed to working together, working with our international partners to tackle this issue of narco-terrorism, to call them out, and to make sure that we do everything we can to put pressure on our decision makers, on our leaders, on our congressional leaders, on our administration to keep going, do more, to be able to break up these cartels, stop the political violence, stop the assassination of innocent people, and help ensure that we can protect families from this evilness, this demonic evilness that we have seen happening because of the drugs that have come into this country and have impacted so many countries. So let's get started.
Please welcome the moderator for the Mexico Cartel Capture and State Collapse Panel, Fran Russo, CPAC Director for the Center for Combating Human Trafficking.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm excited to start with panelists, Larry and Robin. They are both integrally involved in Mexican government's operations here in the United States. Larry, please come join us. Thank you for being here. So I know we have a very busy morning, so we're going to dive right in. The thesis today is that narco-terrorism problem impacts all Americans, but also all Mexican citizens that so many that you represent. And I think the challenge we notice while you serve in Congress as part of this opposition party, that this narco-terrorism problem, security agreements, but there's also a narrative that want to sell that there are not partners in Mexico that want to be part of this security success. Can you talk a little bit about your work to strengthen those ties between our two countries to make sure that we can keep our communities safe and yours?
First of all, I want to thank CPAC. I want to thank Principal Republicano. I want to start introducing myself. As the mother was saying, I'm the first member of the Mexican Congress voted by Mexicans abroad. That means I represent Mexicans living mainly here in the United States. I live in New York and Mexico City. And it's my second term. I defeated Morena, which is the party of the regime. I defeated Morena in 2021 and I defeated by a landslide in 2024. And I started with that because I always pushed for that change in the narrative of what the Mexicans in the US are. Especially because my dad came to this country from scratch with nothing in his pocket for $100, then he became American. And that's how I perceive the US. I love America and I love Mexico. So that's what's in the narrative. Most of the Mexicans here are not like the Mexican government saying that they are against the US or anti-US. We love America, we love Mexico. Out of those 12 million first generation Mexicans, 8 million out of those 12 are legally in this country. Only 4 million are. Obviously, we have to talk about that, but we have the adult with legal status. We're not talking about those kids. We're not talking about those second and third generations. All of them, all of us, love America, love Mexico. And that narrative needs to be perceived as a NAFTA thought in Mexico and US can. Fortunately, with the Mexican government, they're trying to away against building more sentiment of US Mexico as a whole. And that's one of the main things I'm pushing in Congress, change ideology. Sometimes in Congress I speak in English because I have to talk to those second and third generation that are raised here in the US and don't speak a perfect Spanish. So that's the idea of what we do as deputy that represents the migrants. And that's the first part of my information that I would say from Congress. We want to talk about the narrative from PAN, which is my party, the first position, the first leader of the opposition in Mexico, the first political party, strongest one. And that's what we want to change. We have to have the voice of the diaspora, the Mexican diaspora, living in the US, creating jobs, making $2.5 billion US only by Mexicans here in Mexico. That's the story of success. Just like my dad did and a lot of parents did, but just like second generation, but my own.
Thank you, and I think you hit on such an important point. Yes. We talked about it a little bit backstage. In order for there to be success in public safety, fighting these types of crimes that are horrifying to the community, we have to do it together. And we've been a bridge builder in a way that we just have not seen the current regime in Mexico. So thank you for your service. Now, Larry, I'm going to bring you to the tougher topic we talked about last summer right here, which is fighting that nexus between human trafficking and narco terrorism. The unfortunate challenges of drug addiction with trafficking those individuals who get hooked. Those challenges increase this problem being cross-border. Unfortunately, it feels like a 5,000 foot problem, but it's a really important thing. Most importantly, it impacts the economic and personal agreements and the human element of what we do to Mexico. That's it. I'd love for you to talk about the experience that you're at home, but also over the border, how those partnerships actually strengthen our building.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning to all. And I couldn't agree more. First off, thank you and thank you CPAC for hosting this very important forum. Definitely, it impacts our community. Let me start off. My perspective comes from working in this very important relationship for over 2 decades. Not only cross-border building ties and bringing business to the U.S. and making sure that the U.S. companies in Mexico are doing well, and that obviously Americans is well taken care of. And one of the issues that I've always seen, I live in Houston, and Houston is the #1 city with human trafficking. Most people don't realize it. Most people in Houston don't realize it, but it is happening. And drug trafficking and human trafficking are big issues that most don't talk about. Like I said, they're right at a 5,000 level, and the issue is it's stemming from lack of working together with Mexico to resolve these two very big issues: drug trafficking and human trafficking. How does that affect us, right? How does it affect just the general population, and how does it affect the different cities? That's a very, very important point. That's something that President Trump has gotten involved in, and I've seen how his degree of strategic insight into this issue has resolved a number of issues, right? It has been the drug trafficking issue is being tackled. This huge phenomena that's happening not only in Mexico, not only affecting Mexico, but all these cartels and these terrorist networks are coming into our country and are already developed in our country. So how do we stop that from the get-go? How do we work with the local partner? And how can we make sure that they're not affecting our communities? Is the biggest question. I would say this